So this is our Pentagon Compliance Roadmap. And from a DoD perspective, the DoD has an e-commerce system in which they have their contractors use and are basically governed by some of the DFARS clauses and the FAR clauses. But within this whole e-business ecosystem, this is how the contractor gets paid, and the items get marked properly and under specific standards. So if you're delivering end items to the government from a contractor perspective, you're most likely or definitely going to have in that contract that you just won a DFARS clause of 252.211.7003. And with that, you have the mill standard clauses that says you should mark these items in accordance to the mill standard 130, putting a 2D data matrix barcode, which was on the asset on the prior slide. When all that information is present, you've got to create UIIs for the marking, as well as the CLIN numbers to that associated contract, any pedigree information that needs to be there as well. And then if there are parent and child relationships, they need to be present when you're delivering your end items to the government. From a mill standard 129 perspective, all your shipping labels need to be created as well, because when you're sending these items to the government, via either a DD-250 or an ASN, which is an advanced shipment notice, as you can see in number 3, the government wants to know that if they're expecting 100 items, that they're going to get 100 items, and those items have the correct marks on them, and they're ready to go and to be received in by the government. And what you would always also see on this from a prime contractor perspective, and we went through kind of 1, 2, and 3, your subs have the same obligation regardless. The prime is responsible to ensure that that this process 1, 2, and 3 are actually adhered to, because they're responsible on the contract. And then you have the DCMA in the middle of all this, making sure that all your shipments are properly marked and ready to go. And then from a contractor property perspective, you've got a DFARS 252.211.7007, which is a marking requirement. Same thing, if you're a prime, you need to make sure that you're reporting all of your items to the government that you have under GFP. And by default, you should have or you should have in place a systems of internal controls that allow you to manage all of this. And you should also have, and what we're seeing more often now is the FAR clause 52.245-1 in those contracts as well, which also would dictate that you need to adhere to the 10 data elements that are within that, and you've got to do inventory control as well. And those 10 data elements are part number, quantity received, unit of measure, as well as UID, meaning a mark, unit of acquisition cost, as well as a accountable contract number. You also need to make sure that you understand from a location standpoint where their asset is, as well as a in-service date of the items that you received, and as well as a placed in-service number as well. So from a audit readiness perspective, and when DCMA comes in and audits some of these different topics, that's where you'll find that those are the questions that they're going to ask. But what you also need to do here is make sure you're handling all of your life cycle transactions as well. Any type of things that are going to be disposed through PCARs and any life cycle changes to that asset that may happen. You need to make sure that you're reporting that from the standpoint of being a good steward in terms of having the government's property under your custodianship.